Hi, everybody. Welcome to the For a Good Cause webinar series. Thanks for being here. This month's topic is how to manage social media for your nonprofit in 20 minutes a day. I'm very excited to learn about this myself so I can get my social media down from all the time that I spend. Just some housekeeping stuff first. If you can see and hear me, please say hello in the chat on the right. I will do so as well. Let us know, what organization you're from. Let us know, what part of the country that you're from. Let's get to know each other today. We are recording the session today, so I will be sending a replay in the next few days. If you have to step away, that's no problem. You're going to get that recording. If you have any questions as we go, please, put those questions in the chat. We hope to leave 10-15 minutes or so at the end to answer those, and also some questions that were submitted during the registration process. Keep an eye on that right hand side as we go through. I'll also drop a poll, handout, maybe links and things like that as we go along. So just keep an eye on that, as well as the slides as we go through here. I'm going to get things started really by just introducing myself and For a Good Cause. Really appreciate you being on our webinar series today. My name is Ronald Pruitt. I'm the president and founder of For a Good Cause. I've been helping nonprofits raise money online for over 24 years now. I'm coming to you from Kennesaw, Georgia, where I reside with my wonderful wife, my two awesome teenage kids, and my wonderful mother-in-law. Everybody's home today because school is out where I am. So everybody's home. It's someplace in the house today. For a Good Cause, we are an easy-to-use, effective, and affordable fundraising platform, specifically for small to mid-sized nonprofits. Nonprofits that use For a Good Cause typically have donation sizes double the national averages and can typically pay back their investment in our software with a single donation every month. You can check us out at foragoodcause.com. I'll share that link now. I hope that you will check out our blog there, our previous webinars. If you like what you see today, you want to find some other additional education opportunities, you can certainly do that through our website. Now, on to really who you are here to hear from today, and that's Julia Campbell, the wonderful host of Nonprofit Nation, a great podcast. I hope you've been listening to that. Just so excited to have Julia here today. Nobody knows more about the confluence of social media and the nonprofit world, so you're going to learn quite a bit today. She's also one of the nicest people that I've ever met in this industry. So, you're getting to hear from a really great person who knows a lot. So, Julia, I will hand this off to you. And just let me know when you want me to drop a poll, a handout, or anything else that you need.
I'm
So.
a little bit ahead of myself with the slides, but definitely thank you. That's so nice. I'm really excited to be here today. I am north of Boston, Massachusetts. So it is 3:00 where I am, and it is a beautiful day, 68 degrees and sunny. So I see a lot of people from all across the United States: Seattle, Georgia, Minnesota, New York, Iowa, Ontario, Louisville, Maryland, Texas, Canada. Oh my goodness. Rural Washington, Chicago. Huge variety of people on here. And I'm just thrilled to be here with you today. So, we're going to talk about my framework for how to manage social media for your nonprofit in 20 minutes a day. And we actually have someone from Nigeria here. That's amazing. I spent some time in Senegal in West Africa. I was in the Peace Corps there and really have an affinity for that country and that continent. So, if you don't know anything about me, Ronald did do a nice little intro. I'm a mom of two, and my kids are not home yet. We were just talking about that. School is still in session. We don't get out, I think, until end of June, but we are still in session, so still enjoying a little bit of quiet in my house. I'm a member of the school board. I host Nonprofit Nation. I've written 2 books, one on social media, one on storytelling. And I come from the development and marketing world. So I've been a development and marketing director at very small shops. I've actually worked kind of for all different organizations, community-based, international organizations, and universities, healthcare institutions. But my heart always goes to the small nonprofit, the development marketing director, or the development director that is running the show, wearing all of the hats, cleaning the coffee pot, and folding the programs for the gala. That's sort of where I cut my teeth. So if that's you, then you're in the right place. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about some of the trends that you need to understand, just a few benchmarks and data points. Then the 4 pillars of social media management that I teach and that I work with on campaigns with my clients, that I teach in my courses, but also how to put those 4 pillars into 20 minutes a day each week. And then some tools to help you streamline what you're doing. So Ronald, if you could just run the poll. I think everyone, if you go to the polls tab, on the right-hand
Yeah, I'm
side.
dropping that
Okay.
now. Hold on, let me get there.
I just have a quick
There
poll
it is.
just
And share.
to first of all see if you
There we
know
go.
where the polls tab is, but also just to see, get a kind of feel. Now, there are so many social media channels here. There's no right or wrong answer here, but I like to see actually if trends are changing, and if nonprofits are getting on to different channels, because Facebook is always the winner. So which channel do you use most frequently? Looks like Facebook is the clear winner. Instagram, not surprisingly, is in second place. And then if you said other, I would love to know in the chat what other means. Maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's YouTube. So I'd be really interested to see that. And Twitter. Nobody using TikTok. That's interesting. Well, that doesn't mean you don't use it. It just means you don't use it most frequently. LinkedIn. Okay, great. I can only get 5 options here, but LinkedIn is definitely such an up and coming platform for engagement. So I'm excited to see that you're on there. So marketing, whether it be digital, whether it be offline, is no longer about the stuff that you make, but it's really about the stories that you tell. And does social media matter for nonprofits? Well, yes. Not only do a lot of us use it, because just because we use it doesn't necessarily mean that it works, but a great percentage, 36% of people say that they've used Facebook and Twitter to show support for a cause, which I think is pretty impressive and pretty amazing. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, first of all, the Global Trends in Giving report. Fantastic report. If you look at the last slide, the Global NGO Technology report. Those are very interesting reports if you're looking for some benchmarks. And I know that a lot of organizations are looking to see where they stack up and where they fit on the landscape. So for the first year ever, 2021, 29% of online donors said that social media was the communication tool that most inspired them to give. Usually it's email. Email's always the number one tool, but social media kind of eked out email in 2021, which I thought was interesting. 87% of donors who first donate from a social referral source make their second donation from a social referral source, which I think is incredibly interesting. And it does drive a lot of traffic to campaign pages. We, of course, can't deny the effect that now Meta, Facebook, and Instagram fundraising has had on especially small dollar donations and crowdfunding. People have now raised over $5 billion through fundraisers. That's birthday fundraisers or Giving Tuesday fundraisers, or just really donating any kind of event, asking friends for money on Facebook and Instagram. That's a huge amount of money. So if you think your supporters are not online, I encourage you to read up on the demographics of social media use by generations, because baby boomers are actually the fastest growing demographic adopting these kinds of tools. And most baby boomers are on at least 2 platforms, if not more. So yes, of course, these generations engage with you through direct mail. That's probably not going to stop anytime soon, but their online giving and social media use continues to grow. It's important for us to understand that. So we tend to think about millennials and Gen Z and younger generations leading in terms of technology adoption, social media, tablets, and smartphones. But boomers and Gen X, they are heavy adopters. So Pew Research Center publishes several studies per year on technology behavior across demographics. And this was one of the most recent studies that they did. So I think just the point being here, don't write off an entire generation of people and say, oh, well, just because 5 of our board members have never used social media, all baby boomers don't use it, because that's definitely not true. So some things to remember. The internet's not an ATM, right? It's not a money faucet. It was not designed that way. None of these tools were designed for nonprofits to raise money. For a Good Cause was, okay, that's a great example. But social media platforms, they were not designed for that. They were designed for us to connect with friends and family, and then eventually now to sell ads. But at the end of the day, social media platforms have their own best interests at heart. Of course, they have their stakeholders and their shareholders to answer to. So you have to use these channels to build up trust first. Success requires a long-term commitment and a strategy. There's no shortcuts or silver bullets here, right? It's like exercise. It requires consistency, and it's really a marathon and not a sprint. So the way I feel about it is that your nonprofit might be better suited to Instagram, and someone down the street might be better suited to Twitter. It's sort of like, I really like spin class, and then I have friends who are like, absolutely not, and they like Pilates, or they don't exercise, or they like walking, whatever they like. So there's no one size fits all. There are ways to determine what could work best for your organization. So my philosophy is to use social media from a lens that's beyond pushing out marketing messages, that's beyond just thinking about it as a one-way street and sort of a megaphone. I really think that we need to look at it as a community building ecosystem, and think about how we can kind of make hay while the sun shines, even though, you know, the rug is constantly being pulled out from under us at every moment. We don't own anything on these channels. We can't control these channels. But showcasing impact and telling great stories about our mission and where we want to go, it's really a great way to bring new people in and to deepen relationships with existing donors, existing supporters. Everything that we share helps us emphasize our values, our ethics, what we're trying to change, and it helps get in front of a wide variety of people. And, you know, I really believe that social media has a distinct advantage for nonprofits, because we're not selling bags or designer jewelry, or, you know, we're not selling a physical product. We're selling a better world. We're selling our vision for what we're hoping to achieve. And we want to bring people along with us. So where does it fit into my overall strategic plan? If you're asking that question, that's a great question. Social media should not be something that's just kind of off to the side. It needs to be baked into everything that you do. It doesn't replace anything that's working. It doesn't replace direct mail. It doesn't replace phone calls. It doesn't replace your gala or your golf tournament, if those are working for you. And it really works best when you incorporate your offline strategies with your online strategies. Nothing can really be looked at in a complete vacuum. Everything needs to be working together sort of in synchronicity, in your fundraising, your annual plan, your strategic plan, your programmatic plan, and your annual goals for fundraising. So I want to teach you the 4 pillars of social media management. There are 4 legs to this table. And if you want a sturdy table, you're going to need all 4 of these pillars. The first pillar, research and listening. Research and listening. This is something that we might want to do first. This is something that's imperative to do when you are adopting a new platform or when you're adopting a new feature of a platform. So this also means looking for the hook and the angle and what might be interesting to your audience. So we really need to start thinking of ourselves as journalists and documentarians. I studied journalism and I went to Boston University. Love journalism, consider myself a journalist at heart. And I think it really lends itself well to marketing, especially digital marketing, because you constantly have to be thinking, what's the headline? What's the lead? What's going to get my article on the front page of the paper? Or what's going to get it above the fold? What's going to be interesting? And what's kind of that new and unique angle, that interesting hook that's going to get people wanting more? So this might entail listing out bloggers, journalists, and influencers. Like, where do you get information? Where does your audience get information? This is not necessarily just for you to share out as a link, but it's for you to be constantly reading. Like, we need to know what's going on in our industry and in our cause area. We are the go-to resource for a lot of people, especially our donors. They trust us to know what's going on, and they trust us to give us that information and give us the context, give them the context of that information. So this is what I recommend doing. Create a label for email newsletters that you want to follow. That way they'll be in your email provider. And when you're spending time during the week in your research and listening phase, you can go to those email newsletters. Hashtags, keywords, what are things that you want to follow in the news? What are things that are relevant to not just you and your organization, but to your audience? And then adding examples, constantly looking at what other people are doing, taking screenshots, having a Google Drive of examples and ideas that you can pull from for inspiration. And research and listening also means thinking about what's going on in the world. Like, look at what the Albany Public Library did with Facebook and Instagram down. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you that we have books. I mean, they just came out with that on the great Instagram and Facebook outage of 2021. But paying attention, it's just basically paying attention to what's going on in the world around you. The second pillar, content creation and curation. So creation requires you to create original content that is distinct for the channel, and also curating. So if you think about curation, it's you think about a museum curator. They didn't paint all of the artists that are in the Expressionist exhibit. They didn't paint those paintings. They curated them based on the story that they were trying to tell, based on their audience, based on the theme of the exhibit. So we have to look at ourselves as creators, but also curators. Visuals are absolutely imperative. Creating a graphic or having a photo or having a little video or an animated GIF, it really is important that you have a visual with everything that you post. Also, the willingness to take risks and the willingness to be provocative, interesting, and relevant. And that could mean just getting out of your comfort zone, trying some of those shiny new tools. Facebook Live, Instagram Stories. Right now, what is it? Instagram Reels. Trying a new feature and getting out of that comfort zone and trying something that you know is going to really explode your reach and connect with your audience. This requires persistence, constantly being on the lookout, being a detective, being a documentarian, being a journalist, looking for photos, looking for stories, looking for mission moments to keep your audience wanting more. So what this specifically might entail in terms of your weekly tasks, write down 5 to 10 topics, stories, types of posts that your audience likes and responds to. And then think about how many of these posts you can create and how many of these posts you can curate from, of course, trusted and relevant sources. And then this requires updating your content calendar, actually where the rubber meets the road, creating the videos, creating the content, the graphics, the captions, that kind of thing. Now, I usually just use Google Spreadsheet for my content calendar. You can use something fancy, HubSpot, Sprout Social, Airtable, or something simple like Excel. The third pillar is community management. When you open this can of worms, the social media can of worms, you really can't unopen it. Of course, you can delete your accounts if you want to delete them. But a story that I always tell, the story of how I worked for the mayor of the town where I grew up, and he is still the mayor. It's been years and years and years. And so I worked for him probably about 12 years ago. And he was very concerned about the back and forth nature of social media. He asked me, so can I turn off the comments and the DMs and the replies and all of that? And I said, you're probably better off with just a blog. You're probably better off with maybe an email list, but still email, people can hit reply. They can reply to that email. So if you're not open to comments and, if you're not open to people asking you questions, social media is not really the best place to be. People expect answers and acknowledgement, even if it's just a thank you so much for commenting. Thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you had this experience. So if you don't want to open up these two-way conversations, then you're probably not ready for social media, because it's supposed to be a two-way. It's not supposed to be broadcast. It's not a television. It's not a billboard. It's not a newspaper ad. So community management, what this might entail: following 10 accounts per week. We are not Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift follows 0 people on Instagram and has, over 150 million followers. We are not her. So we have to follow people to constantly be building up our own following, and also to show the platforms that we're not just a spammer or a bot. If you don't follow anybody, Instagram's going to think you're a bot. Twitter is going to think you're a bot. If you just show up once every 6 months and, share a bunch of links and then don't ever comment again, the algorithms are really going to think that you are a spammer. So look at who follows you. Look at who you could follow back. You do not have to follow everyone that follows you. Absolutely not. Just follow people that make sense. Make sure you're answering all questions. If they're negative in tone, then it depends. If they are negative in tone, but they don't violate your terms of service, like you're violate your policies. Maybe you have a policy, no obscenity, no bullying, no racist terminology, no harassment, that kind of thing. If they violate that, then you can delete it. If they just look like they're purely harassment for harassment's sake, if they make no sense, if they're just spam, delete. But if it's a legitimate criticism that's negative, take it offline, direct them to the DMs, see if they can email you. This is not relevant for the majority of nonprofits that I deal with, unless you are working in a very provocative issue area. But don't feed the trolls. But there are people that really have legitimate concerns, and you want to make sure that you are addressing those concerns. The fourth pillar, measurement and analysis. This is where organizations slack. They slack off here because they think, and then they come to me and they say, well, we're not really getting a good return on investment on our social media, or it's not working. We can't figure out if it's working or not. Well, are you doing any consistent measurement and any consistent analysis? Like if you don't know how well you're doing, how can you figure out where to improve, what to do more of, and what to lose? This is why we feel like we're spinning our wheels. Everything we do online is 100% measurable and quantifiable. Everything we do. Link clicks, conversion rates, traffic, views, engagement, everything is quantifiable. Everything has a number attached to it. We can measure what we're doing. And this work involves really figuring out what to measure and where to find that data. It also requires maybe creating a simple spreadsheet. Maybe it's 3 data points, managing that. This is going to help you show coworkers and other staff members that what you're doing is more than just sort of tweeting about what you had for lunch. Although nobody tweets about what they had for lunch ever. So that's somehow someone said that one time and it stuck. No one ever does that. This is also going to help you when you need that benchmarking data. So you'll be able to find benchmarking data for your own organization and say, oh, 6 months ago, this happened. June is usually a busy month, or November is a busier month. So we kind of know what to expect year over year. So there's not as many surprises. So it's on you to choose those relevant metrics to track, to run those reports, to report out to your supervisors and others, and then use that data to analyze and identify trends, help you improve the work. Don't measure something that you're not going to then use to affect your work in some way, to say, okay, we're going to improve it, or this is doing great, we're going to do more of it. Don't measure data or metrics for just measurement's sake. So the framework that I teach, so 20 minutes per day, you're not going to be doing all of this every single day. It's completely dependent on your organization. But what I recommend is Mondays you spend on research and listening and community management. Tuesdays, content creation and curation, scheduling. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, more research and listening, community management. And then Friday, measurement and analysis. So your week might look different than this week, but this is what I recommend. I definitely don't recommend doing all 4 pillars, like spending 5 minutes on all 4 pillars every day, because then you're going to be stretched way too thin. If you have more time than 20 minutes, then certainly use that time that you have. But if you are shoehorning it in with a lot of other responsibilities, I find that this is the best way to kind of to parse it out. Some productivity tips so you don't go down a social media like total rabbit hole. I really recommend using the Pomodoro technique. And this, this comes from when people used to use those tomato timers. And you can do this for 20 minutes. You can set the timer for however long you want. Pomodoro is traditionally 25 minutes, but you can set it for however long you want. If you go to mytomatoes.com, you can actually track where your time goes, and then you can reset the timer. And you can also, there are many tools that somehow will shut down all of your other tabs. You don't want anything that shuts down your Wi-Fi because you are going to be using it for social media. The key here is just to stay focused. And I know it's difficult. You go on Facebook and then all of a sudden you see 7 messages and 25 other things, and you're down this rabbit hole. So the key here is just to stay as focused as possible, stay on track as possible. So I recommend keeping a regimented schedule and assigning those 20 minutes every day and having them in your calendar and having that be like non-negotiable time. I'm sure you're going to be completing other tasks. So schedule this dedicated 20 minutes when you're not going to be interrupted. Don't let your notifications from social media go to your regular inbox. Send them to a special folder in your email so you can check them when you're doing your social media time. Everything gets their own folder in my inbox, and then I schedule time to monitor these networks one by one and check out notifications. So the key to success here is also implementing a long-term plan for social media. So there's a handout, and maybe Ronald, you can put it in the handouts, the weekly task list.
Yep, it's there. If you look on the right, you'll be able to download that right to your computer.
Great. So the weekly task list is something I created. It's all based on what we talked about in the slides. It's based on the 4 pillars. So the research and listening, content creation and curation, community management, measurement, and analysis. And it's just going to give you those recommended tasks that you should do every week if you are in charge of your nonprofit social media. So I wanted to give you something to take away, something to maybe show your boss, something to maybe hopefully give to someone else that maybe can take something off your plate. But I wanted to provide that for you. That's just a real, because I like to give tangible examples of things that my clients are working on. And of course, you can update that and iterate it as you need. So the real key here with success is that the 20 minutes per day, they're not going to matter if you don't integrate social media into your long-term strategic planning. So if you think about your goals are not getting on Facebook, start tweeting, get 5,000 fans. Those are tactics to get you to your goals. If you think about Facebook ads, that's a tactic. Going live on Instagram, that's a tactic. That is not a goal. That is not a goal. Your goal at your organization is going to be very different from your neighbor down the street, but you have to think about it from the place of starting with a goal. What can social media help you achieve? These are some questions that you can work through if you're finding it challenging to really identify your goal. If you could wave a magic wand, how could social media help your nonprofit grow? Now, I'm assuming you want to grow in some way. You want to grow your programs. Maybe you want to grow your fundraising program, your annual appeal. Maybe you want to grow your staff. I'm assuming that you're using social media because you want to grow in some area. What are the possibilities and the opportunities? And how will you know success? That's the key piece. How will you know success? Because why would you do a tactic if you're not going to measure your success? Then you need to be strategic about your audiences. Who are you trying to talk to? There's really 2 main segments for most nonprofits. The people that are with you and have an interest in what you do. They've raised their hand. Maybe they follow you on a social media platform. They've signed up for your email list. Maybe they've donated. Maybe they've volunteered. And then there's the people that you need to reach and engage in order to grow, in order to accomplish your goals, because we're constantly needing to meet and be in front of new people. Once you have your goal in place and you know your audience segments, that's when you can choose your platforms. You can't choose your platforms first. You absolutely cannot do that. Some organizations, a lot of organizations will ask me, should I be on TikTok? I actually got a question on a webinar the other day. What's the most important platform for nonprofits right now? And I just can't answer that question because I don't know your goal and I don't know your audience. So an example that I give is that I work for Boston Public Schools and work with Boston Public Schools. And we're working on a campaign for October, which is College Month. We're working to increase the number of seniors that complete the FAFSA, the federal application for federal student aid. And we are trying to reach different subsets of audiences. We're trying to reach teens, seniors in high school, administrators, and parents. And so what I was tasked with was trying to figure out which platforms go with which audiences, which I love that, because predominantly they were mostly on Facebook. And seniors in high school are not on Facebook, okay? They're just not. But parents definitely are, and administrators might be. So where can we find these different subsets of these audiences tailor the message and target what we're doing. So you have to choose the platforms after you know the audience you're trying to reach and the goal that you're trying to achieve. Each platform is its own country. Each platform is its own country with its own best practices, its own rules, etiquette, language. You would not buy a guidebook for Germany if you're going to France. You would not buy a guidebook for Instagram if you're trying to be on Snapchat. It's not the same thing. It's sort of like if you have a website strategy and an email strategy, you need a channel specific strategy for every channel you're on. This is why I recommend being on as few channels as possible. Go deep. It's, what is it, like an inch deep and a mile wide. Don't do that. Do not do that on social media. It doesn't work. So when you're thinking of the platforms that make sense for you and your goals and your audience, think about the goal for using this specific platform. Who's our audience on this platform? And what are they interested in seeing from us? Who should we follow? And I meant to say interact with on platform. When should we post and how often? Posting on Twitter, you can get away with posting 5-10 times a day. You probably wouldn't do that on Instagram. How should we specifically create content that works on this platform? And what should we measure? I always think less is more and quality over quantity when we're talking about social media. And the key here also is not to ask the question of cutting through the clutter. You need to ask the question of cultivating and nurturing a group of supporters that actually care, that would follow you from platform to platform, that would miss you if you were gone. Also, we need to stop thinking about our own agenda and think about creating content that people want to read, watch, and consume on social media channels. Think about these little mission moments. It doesn't require a lot of content creation. It's a photo and a quote. Volunteering makes me feel good. Putting my heart and soul into helping people. What keeps me coming back every time is just to see the guests, the other volunteers, Chef Sherry. She makes it a very happy place. She makes sure that you're okay. So if you're thinking about storytelling on social media, especially, this is a perfect example. It's not about Brendan, right? It's not, I'm Brendan. I volunteered here for 10 years. I love it. It's about how it makes him feel. It's about what keeps him coming back every time. Think about that if you're interviewing your staff and doing some staff spotlights. People like to see this behind the scenes, human interest. They really are craving connection. And this also lends your nonprofit an air of credibility and integrity when you're sharing these volunteer stories, when you are sharing these staff stories. Think about the content your audience wants to hear from you. So during the pandemic, Susan G. Come in Florida was fielding a lot of questions from their audience. They are primarily women who are either actively suffering from breast cancer or they're survivors. Can we go to chemo? Can we do our treatments? Can we go to the doctor? Is it safe? What's the vaccine going to do to us? Like all these questions. So they created a lot of content around that to answer those questions, not for fundraising purposes, not for, community activation purposes, strictly because they are and wanted to continue to be the go-to resource. Same with Amira Incorporated. If you strive to be the go-to resource, you have to create resources that people will go to, right? Like Seth Godin says, if you want to be remarkable, you have to do things that people remark on. It's pretty straightforward. Think about other things that your audience is interested in other than maybe your cause. Maybe they're interested in history, or they're interested in women's issues, or they're interested in what museums do at night, or there's a lot of ways you can capitalize on some of these social media trends without making it all about your organization. And then, of course, sharing these mission moments, these stories, these great photos, sharing your impact. That is hugely important, and that should be a huge piece of your content creation. Should be sharing stories, visuals, videos, statistics, data, stories of impact. What about a little daily tip? These work really well on social media. 29 ways to show family caregivers the love. What is today's tip? Daily tips in February. Or asking a question. How will you stand up to cancer today? Today I will stand up to cancer by. Inviting that two-way conversation, inviting that participation, that engagement, that's going to help you build momentum and create that community. So we know that trends come and go. I absolutely love this graphic, vintage social networking. I love the Rolodex that's linked in. Actually, my son saw this graphic and he pointed to the black phone and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh man, I don't know if he's ever seen a rotary phone before." I know. So he said, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, that's a phone." "Oh, it doesn't look like a phone." Well, it's a phone. But I love that trends come and go. It's not about the tools. It's not about the trends. It's about what you do, how you use them. And the only way to future-proof your strategy is to meet your donors where they are, not where you want them to be. Of course, we would want them to be somewhere that we are very comfortable, a place that we are using all the time. But they are diverse humans. They are on a bunch of different platforms using them for their own personal enjoyment, professional development. The other key is to make every interaction pleasant, joyful, frictionless, clear. Make it a good experience for the donor and think about them first when you're writing all of this copy and these captions and creating these videos. I mean, the only constant that we have is that everything is constantly changing. So as long as we focus on building a real community that's going to follow us, no matter where we set up shop, then that's going to be the key. So here are some of my favorite tools. If you go to any of these links, if you go to canva.com/nonprofits, you can get a free premium account. Canva, they love nonprofits. They have 1 million case studies. They have great customer service. I adore the people at Canva. And they actually have a social media management tool that you can use, video editing tools. It's probably one of the most game-changing resources that's come across my desk in the past few years. Animoto is one of my favorite video editing tools. It's like video editing for dummies. You have those 50 photos that you took of the golf tournament. You can put them in Animoto, add some music, put a little text overlay, and there you go. You've got a video of the golf tournament or the gala or whatever it might be. Lumen 5, they even go a step further and they have stock videos and stock photography that you can use, and you can just put your own text overlay over it. And then WordSwag is one of my favorite apps for on the go, creating kind of graphics on the go. It's one of my favorite mobile apps. Some tools to schedule your social media. I do recommend you take this with a grain of salt, that you don't schedule too much. Also because we have seen in recent months, recent weeks, recent days that the world's gone completely mad. And also we don't know when we might go dark. We don't know when we might want to pull some advertisements or pull some of our social media content. So just be cognizant if you're scheduling, be cognizant about what's going on in the world, and, make sure you can pull the plug on things if you don't want to be tweeting. But Later, Buffer, Hootsuite, those platforms also offer some fantastic measurement tools as well. So you can run reports. And that's a good sign. I had a mosquito in here. That means summer is coming, I guess. So you can run reports that you can then give. They're really nice looking reports that you can then give to your supervisors or just use for your own iterations. So some ending thoughts before we take questions. Done is better than perfect. Please do not beat yourself up if a few tweets go unanswered, or a blog post is a day late, or a Facebook post has a formatting error. Everything could be edited and cleaned up. Tomorrow's another day. Now, for a lot of us, we're doing very, very important work. But if a tweet goes out with a typo in it, if a visual doesn't look perfect, no one is going to be hurt by these mistakes. You're doing the best that you can. Done is better than perfect. We don't want to send out sloppy stuff into the universe. I don't mean being sloppy, but perfectionism on social media, it's not going to get you anywhere. Done is better than perfect. Okay, so I'm ready for questions if you want to connect with me. Also, Ronald, if you want to put up the link to my workbook, my digital storytelling workbook that people can sign up for and grab to help you sort of frame your stories for digital channels. That would be great too. I have a blog, podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, anywhere you're online.
Yeah, perfect. Julia, this is amazing. We've got a lot of questions here.
Sure. So, and we got a lot
go back through
as well.
Sure. Let's start with the chat here. Stacy says, should we be asking for donations in the curated pieces? Interesting, you curated versus your own content there. Should you be asking for donations in those postings?
That's interesting. I think it has to be compelling. So I have seen that. So I remember Amira posted a study about sexual exploitation in the United States and sex trafficking and how it had increased in the last year. And they posted that study, and then they were inviting people to learn more at the website. So it's hard to post two links. So if you post like an infographic with statistics and then you can post a link to the donate button, I think that's fine. Another example I would give you is during COVID, I work with foster care agencies and agencies trying to prevent child abuse or help survivors of child abuse. And what they found is that reports were way down during COVID because children were not with trusted adults. They were not at school or after school or doing sports. So they were always posting studies about statistics and then saying, look, this is still a problem. Like, we know this is still happening and we need to keep our doors open. So I think there's a way that you can tie a curated resource into an ask, but it has to be done thoughtfully.
Right. Maybe you post that curated piece and then you're, as you say, you're listening for comments, retweets, and then you can say, well, that's true. If you want to help on this issue,
yes,
this is where you can go because we're working on this and here's what we're doing.
Yep, absolutely.
Sure. Heather, and I think a lot of people are, really posting this. How often should I be posting? And you mentioned that, but I think, can you just reassure people? I know you get this question all the time.
There's just no one size fits all. I wish I could tell you. That's sort of like, how much should I exercise? It's really like exercise. So if you can do, once a week, that's great. If you can do one channel a week, one channel per day, I think that's great. But if you can only do 3 times a week, that's great as well. Well, we have to know about posting. What I don't want you to do is you have an event in June and you only post in May and June, and then you don't post for 6 months. Because the algorithms, we have to understand the social media algorithms, they take that data and they see that and they think, oh, maybe you're a bot, maybe you're a spammer, maybe you're not relevant, maybe you're just trying, who knows what you're doing. But the more consistent you can be, and this is like anything else. I've seen this with podcasting. Every week, showing up, just showing up. Done is better than perfect, right? And you'll see that little trajectory that will go up. And the other thing I want to say is, you're not posting enough. I know all of you are not posting enough, 100%. You're afraid of annoying people. Well, guess what? If you post once a day on your Facebook page, I'm lucky to see one of those posts. We're not annoying people if we're sharing content that's valuable and relevant and helpful, but also we are assuming that everyone is seeing every post, and that's not true. So I say, post more than you think, email more than you think, and you will see your engagement go up.
Right. These people have clicked to follow you to say, I want to hear from you.
Yeah,
so
and then
probably did.
I've been in those meetings where it's like, well, I followed you or I'm on your email list, but I never see anything. It's like, okay. It breaks my heart, but it's the truth.
Yes. Yes. Aaron says, can you explain hashtags? You talked about that in your listening
So
section.
hashtags are a way to filter out information, but also a way to search for information. So on Instagram and LinkedIn in particular, you can follow a hashtag. So I can, like I did, like say I went to a conference, which I just did in Vegas. The hashtag was AFP icon. I can follow that hashtag, and that way I see the posts that have that hashtag on it. And then I can connect with people, follow more people, get involved in conversations around that hashtag. So to me, the more specific the hashtag, the better. Like if your hashtag is hashtag cancer, millions of people are using that, and you're probably not going to get noticed, and it's going to be hard to be seen. But if your hashtag is, hashtag Salem, Mass, or hashtag, Nantucket, or so, I'm just thinking of where I live. If there are specific hashtags, the more specific you can be, the better. But it's really like a topic. It's almost like if you're searching for something, it's like a search term. And then it's a way to filter out everything on the internet. So you're just seeing posts that have that tag on it. So it can be used for exploration, exposure. It can be used for search. It can be used to be more visible. There's a multitude of ways, but also hashtags are used differently on every platform. They're used very differently. Like I wouldn't put more than 2 on LinkedIn. I don't know if I'd use them on Facebook. People do. I don't like them on Facebook. Twitter, probably not more than 2. And then Instagram, you can use like 30 and no one blinks an eyelash. So it's like, this is always very different on every platform.
Yes. There's some discussion in the chat kind of prompted by a question from Vonda, really about using a personal Facebook account to interact as a nonprofit, and how do you filter things out with that? I assume, a lot of the responses are really about, using a separate kind of corporate nonprofit account with probably any channel. I assume you would agree with that?
Yeah, you can really easily do that. So if you have a page for your nonprofit, but you're the admin, no one can see that you're the admin at all. No one can see that you're connected. No one will see your name, your face, your anything, other than the other admins. So if you've got a bunch of 5 admins on the page, they can see it, but no one will see it. And you have to go into the upper right-hand side and just operate as your page. And if you operate as your page, everything you post, all the comments, anything you share will come up as your nonprofit and not your personal. So it's actually easier to do with the new Facebook interface. I found it easier. It's not as easy on the phone, unfortunately. But you can do that on Instagram as well. You can toggle between the two, but the key is, I guess, just making sure that in the upper right-hand side, it's logged in as your page, and not as your personal. But they make it very easy to do.
Right. There's a question from Heather about, she wears all the hats and how she's going to manage this. And I know you got to stick to those 20 minutes.
Well, wearing all the hats, you really have to figure out, you've got to advocate for yourself. What I recommend doing is a time tracker. Really track your time, because what I think happens is that we get a job description, but we don't understand that in each of those bullets on the job description are 20 different tasks. It's like grants management. Okay, that's at least 10 different tasks under grants management. So really helping people understand every single task that you're doing and what the time that it takes. So that way, when people are trying to put more on your plate, you can say, okay, what's going to come off my plate? Because right now my plate is so full. So if you want, me to manage the TikTok account, then maybe creating the brochure has to come off my plate. So it's just not possible for everyone to do all the things. It's just simply not possible. So, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, but just helping other people understand the time management that's required. And that's why I do the 4 pillars. So you can show your boss, it's not just tweeting about what I had for lunch. There's 4 distinct pieces that make this successful. and they all require time and intention.
Right. Question from Gabriella, if one channel isn't ideal for a nonprofit and you figure that out for yourself, how do you go about saying goodbye
I've seen this a
to
lot.
that
I've
channel?
seen a lot of people leave Twitter recently with the Elon Musk, the purchase from Elon Musk. So what people have done is they've just written in their bio, taking a break, follow me on Instagram, or taking a break, follow my blog. So what I wouldn't do is delete the account, because you want to make sure you always have that, your nonprofit's address, and you just want to make sure you own that and someone else is not going to take that over. But you can always just pin a post that says, we're taking a break from this, follow us on this other channel.
Right. Question from Grace. Our social media is very client facing. They're a food shelf. And how can they balance this with trying to also have an audience for donors and volunteers? I assume that kind of goes back to your goals and
it goes back to your
figure
goals.
out who your audience is. Yeah.
So if you are trying to build out your client portfolio, if you're trying to get more clients or get more people to be in your programs, then I think you can still talk about your programs. Your donors like the client facing stuff. Maybe you don't want to say we're having a support group tonight at 10, but donors really don't mind if something is client facing, as long as it relates to the mission. As long as I can see as a donor, oh, this is such great work they're doing, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. So I think that we tend to think that donors want this crazy different information than they really do. They just want to see that work's being done that they care about, and they want to see that the problem is being tackled. So I bet a lot of your client facing information is relevant to donors. If it's not, then I would create a group for clients. That could be like a private group where they could all connect and talk, and you could really share information about support groups and hotlines and resources and things like that.
Sure. Question from Stacy about LinkedIn. I know you and I talked the other day, last week, about how it's being used. What are you seeing there?
I love LinkedIn. So I have a little bit of a bias because they invited me to be on stage with them at the AFP conference, LinkedIn for Nonprofits. And I'm not paid by them, but I'm just enthralled with them. I think their entire philosophy around how social media should be used is a lot better and more appropriate for nonprofits than maybe Meta and a lot of the other channels. And if you go to LinkedIn for Nonprofits, they have a wide array of resources, but the LinkedIn company pages, they haven't really come of age yet. It's still mostly based on people and your personal profile. But on LinkedIn, your personal profile is very different than your Facebook profile. It's your professional experience. It's things you've written about. It's your portfolio. It's articles that you find interesting. It's very professionally focused. So honing your LinkedIn profile is going to help you in that thought leadership space, but also connecting with donors, prospective board members, corporate sponsors, people that could, donate an auction item. I think LinkedIn is kind of like the dark horse of social media, but for nonprofits, I think it's the opportunities are really as yet to be kind of they're kind of limitless.
Yeah, I actually had one of my clients said, "Hey, we're starting to use LinkedIn to go talk to people about our event sponsorships, finding those corporations they're gonna write those checks."
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Let's see a couple more in the chat here. Amy's talking about what is the best time of the day to post. So I know you get the question how often. You probably get what time of the day, and she's saying, should we accept the suggestions from the platform that we're using, Hootsuite or Buffer or whatever it may be?
I would definitely accept those suggestions. Facebook Creator Studio offers a lot of suggestions. They're not going to steer you wrong. I mean, they want engagement. That's what they want, because they want you to continue to use their platform. So I would absolutely accept those recommendations. But then think about your audience. Like, it goes back again to when I'm working with Boston Public Schools. If we're talking to teachers, we're not going to post at 10 a.m. because they usually don't have their phone. They're not checking Facebook until maybe 3 or even 4 p.m. So you can also look at your analytics in each of the platforms to see when people are online. I know on Facebook and Instagram you can, to see when the majority of your people are active. So I would do that. And I would just also really think about their behavior, their activities, like LinkedIn, Eastern time, like between 9 to 5 tends to be a great time to post on LinkedIn. Instagram later at night tends to be a better time. So it's all sort of platform specific and audience specific.
Sure. Julia, I don't want to keep you too much. We're kind of hitting the top of the hour.
Sure.
Just a couple more questions here. When you're thinking about your what you're going to be posting, is a good question from Carly. Is it tacky just to ask your audience? What do you want? Ask them what they want to hear.
Well, that's a tough one because they often don't know, and they're probably not going to tell you. If you could do multiple choice, that might work. But simply just saying, what do you want to see from us? I think they're not even going to, it's like, I know it when I see it, right? That's the kind of problem that we all run into. Certainly sending out an email survey, maybe asking, what do you like to see on social media? Do you like videos? Do you like photos? What other brands and nonprofits do you follow? What's, one of your favorite accounts to follow? And that's going to give you some insight. But simply asking them, what do you want to see? Oftentimes people, they don't know. They just kind of know it when they see it. And it's hard to get a response in that way. But if you can do multiple choice, any kind of way you can sort of make it frictionless like that, that will work better. But I don't think that's tacky at all. I think I would love if more people asked me what I wanted to see from them.
Right. Just a couple of things from the registration, and we'll get everybody out of here.
Sure.
Brand awareness. Get a question from Gabriella. Can you use social media for just general brand awareness?
The problem with awareness is that it's incredibly difficult to measure, because if you hire me to raise awareness, I could get you one more website visitor, and in a court of law, I could prove that I increased awareness. So you want to be very careful when you're measuring that kind of goal. And awareness and knowing about something doesn't necessarily mean people are going to take an action. I think it's the first step, certainly. And also, if you're trying to change hearts and minds around something, a lot of awareness can really help. But for our purposes, like, we want to create that awareness, and maybe doing an awareness campaign before we actually do an activation campaign can work. But we want to make sure that awareness translates into something tangible.
Great. A couple of rapid fire. Katie says, how do I implement requests from the team? You're talking about curating, impact stories and stuff. Is there a best way to work with the rest of the team in the nonprofit?
Have a form and then have very strict rules around it. Usually, have a meeting, have a staff meeting, but I would have a form. See, now there's two prongs to this. I always have clients that are in one of two camps. One, they can't get content from staff to save their life. The second one is this. I have too many staff members firing things at me. It's never in between. It's like so bizarre. Right. So I would say have a form, have something that so it makes it not arbitrary. Show everybody your content calendar and your goals, and be like, look, this is year-end giving, and this is the focus this month. Here's some content holes that we might need to fill, and here's where we could kind of plug you in. So just be transparent about the content calendar, and then have a form or some way that they can send you content.
Right. And last question, and I think you're probably the perfect person to answer this. Kind of goes to what channels you want to be on. There's a question from John. He said he's dad to two teenage daughters, and he doesn't like how Instagram, the type of things that are going on about self-image. He's got two daughters, and are there alternatives? When you want to boycott, one channel versus the other, how do you quit? How do you move your audience to something else? And how do you explain that?
No, I love this question. I have a 12-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. And so she constantly wants to be on Instagram. And I think we all have some serious thought. Like we have to have some serious rumination on what platforms we're being on and if we're spending money. I know a lot of nonprofits, they can't quit Facebook or Instagram because they are serving a great number of people and they're sharing great content and they have a community there, but they've chosen maybe not to spend money, not to spend money on ads. We're not going to find a perfect social media platform. And it goes back to the point that I kind of touched on in the beginning, where these platforms are multi-billion-dollar businesses, all of them. They have their shareholders at heart. That's what they are, answer to their shareholders. Then maybe the users, maybe, and then like us, they really, they're not set up with our best interests at heart. So we have to kind of take these with a grain of salt. I don't think nonprofits should leave, wholeheartedly, because then what would be left on Facebook if we left? It would be just like a cesspool of I don't know what. So I think there's some rumination that has to happen. And honestly, I really struggle with Meta. I struggle after the whistleblower came out, after that study came out on Instagram harming 30% of teen girls. Elon Musk buying Twitter. There's all sorts of struggles. So I think social media needs to be a piece of the pie, and we need to still have email, website, direct mail, all of these other pieces in place, because the social media piece is constantly shifting. The grounds are shifting underneath us constantly. But these are really good questions to ask. And I just wish I had a one size fits all answer. I know for me, it's just constantly learning, listening, and just trying to do what's right for me personally, and for my clients. But these are really important questions. I don't think that the business world's asking these questions, right? The nonprofit sector is asking them, and they're really important questions to ask.
Yes. And I can say that I follow you to get these types of answers. So
yeah. Julie, I think about it a lot. So yeah, I know I need to be writing and doing more on the greater implications, because there are huge implications, but just not building our house on rented land, right? Using the rented land as like an Airbnb, and then hopefully bringing people over to donate, bringing people to our database, our email list, bringing people over to make a deeper connection with them. So constantly having that strategy to bring people over to the lands we kind of control. That's usually what I advise to do. But that's a whole nother webinar.
Yes, Julie, this was wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing this. I want to thank everybody for your questions. If we didn't get to a question, all the questions are being recorded as well, so that will get to Julia in the data that I send her after this.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending time today. This was wonderful. I know you guys are busy, so spending time with us is wonderful. Yes. I want to tell you, go to Julia's website, follow her podcast. You're going to get great information going forward, so be a follower of her. If you are watching this later on demand, let me share my slide again here. So you can always reach me here with any questions or something that you didn't get that you want to get. I will send out the replay, hopefully by tomorrow, if not over the weekend. As when I close this out, you will be redirected to a survey. Please let us know how we did today. If there's any other things that you want on the For Good Cause webinar series, let me know. If you want to have Julia back, I do, so let me know about that as well. I hope everybody found this useful, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Julia. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ronald. Have a great Memorial Day.
All right. We'll talk soon, everybody. Bye-bye.